Thank you very much, and welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us today for hopefully a very interesting and condensed hour of focusing on particular elements of Wing Chun Kung Fu called Chongqi, forward sticking energy. And I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But first, I'd like to welcome you to our home Kun in Victoria, British Columbia. That's where I'm based, and I'd like to introduce Sifu Mark Watson. He's my most senior student and the Sifu of our home club now, just transitioned to him recently, and my other Gold Sash instructor, Raj Paul, who's supporting me in developing our club in Aguascalientes, Mexico, and other interesting projects that we may have. Just a little bit, I want to just acknowledge the lineage that I come from. I want to thank the Grandmaster Sonny Tang for passing on his wisdom and knowledge. He's based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Passing on his knowledge to my Sifu, Walter Jacobchuk, who's based in Ottawa, Ontario. And I really want to acknowledge their gifts of passing on hand to hand this traditional knowledge of a traditional Chinese martial art. And yeah, what else do I want to say about that? I think that's good for now. And so thank you, gentlemen. They're going to come in and out and help demonstrate some things at a time. So, you know, I've been training for 30 years and teaching for about 20 years, this beautiful art. And the focus today, as I mentioned, is going to be on Chongqi, forward sticking energy. But for some of you who maybe aren't Wing Chun practitioners, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the Wing Chun system, and that shouldn't take too long. So hopefully that overview will help you understand this one element that we want to talk about. Otherwise, it may be hard to make sense of. And so in our system, and I do want to talk about this beautiful martial art of Wing Chun as a traditional Chinese martial art, but also a system. So it's embodied in what we call the Fat Do, or as my Sifu calls our conceptual framework. And in that conceptual framework, we have two dominant theories that guide our learning so that the martial arts can actually become an embodied part of who we are. We have three principles and some supporting ideas. And here we have also some, thank you with the word six what? Gentlemen? Attributes, thank you very much. I'll get over my stage fright shortly. So the 6 attributes, and I'm going to talk about those individually. So this whole philosophical orientation of understanding the art is really what's important. We have a long curriculum in your Wing Chun journey, exercises, hand forms, weapons, you know, the signature exercise of Wing Chun, which is the Chi Sao, the sticking hands. All of these things guide us to the martial art becoming part of our being, our nervous system that expresses itself certainly physically, but also in our relationships and our emotions, our psychology. It's a full package, like many traditional Chinese martial arts. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about Wing Chun, and how it sort of you know, presents itself to us. And so when we talk about our two theories within our system, we have what's called a center line theory and straight line theory. And for those of you who looked at the opening quote that I had on for today's advertising, you may have seen a rather provocative statement that I made that, you know, in Wing Chun, our goal is to control and occupy the center line. And then if we can do that, you know, very well, that we never get hit and that we can hit any time we want. So again, that's very suggestive around the philosophy of the art. Right, that we're really wanting to make sure that, you know, we're not doing rough and tumble and taking shots and having to put on a lot of physical and emotional armor, because this art fully expresses all of us. So I don't want to have to numb out physically or emotionally. So it's a bit on the conservative side in terms of making sure that, you know, I protect myself, but at the same time that I'm going to be able to defend myself and attack at will and when necessary, when and if I can control the center line. So let me just briefly tell you about the center line in Wing Chun. So if you look at the vertical axis, the axis that runs through your body, in that your hands are sort of presented forward, this is the line that I want to be able to occupy and protect. And so there's some reasons around that. A lot of the vital targets on the human body run through that vertical axis of the body. Right, the throat, the solar plexus, which is the will force of the human beings. If someone gets hit or struck there, it really takes out a lot of their intent, if we can do that. But anywhere along this line also allows you to attack the core of the body. not sort of peripheral glancing shots. We can take a person's balance, all the vital targets are there. And then, of course, I can bring the full structure of my Wing Chun stances into the center line. And I'm just going to have Mark come on out here just for a moment to sort of demonstrate very quickly the efficacy of really focusing on training on the center line. Now, if Mark is facing me square, we call this doyang, it just gives me a zhongsao technique. And his wrist is occupying that vertical line on the sweet spot, which is at the solar plexus. And I'll tell you a little bit why this is the sweet spot on the center line that goes from floor all the way to the top of the head. And when I engage here, because Mark has the structure of his shoulders and hips square and his feet rooted into the floor, right now we're sharing the center line. Right now, Mark is occupying it and I'm off of it. And I can run a lot of energy into this structure, right, with him just staying here. And I'm just going to incrementally feed some energy into these techniques. Now I'm aiming for his head. And I'm throwing my hip into it, fully extending. Now, of course, this isn't a fight. This is just demonstrating the beautiful structure that roots oneself all the way to the floor. Now, if I ask Mark to break that structure, to turn his shoulders and hips just a little bit off of the center line, because his center line is his center line. Right? It's not mine. So he always wants his center line to be facing me, which is where we first started. But now that his center line is off, but his wrist is still on that same place, it takes very little force or energy for me to actually penetrate that. Right? And of course, if I'm stepping, it's really easy. If he squares up again just one more time, and even allows me to share the center line with him. So this is why it's so important in our system to occupy and control the center line. Now, the nature of the art, if you believe the myths or the stories around that, was developed by a woman who maybe didn't have a lot of strong physical energy, brute force, and aggression. So the structure that she would need to actually create in her body to bring her entire being, her entire structure into a point of contact with somebody else who maybe isn't skilled, this is the idea of how this art can work for maybe smaller people as well. They're using the whole structure of their body against a person's disintegrated force or structure. So a straight line theory. So if I can control that, then I never get hit and I can hit anytime I want. Now that's in theory. And that also means to hit with power. Now in a physical altercation, fight, whatever that may, there's going to be contact for sure. But if I get glanced on the side, the periphery of my body, that doesn't mean the fight's over. I'm still going to be able to go and hit very damaging, vulnerable parts of that person on their center line. Okay, so this is sort of the orientation that we want you to understand. So as we train to occupy and control center line, you get really good self-defense skills as a consequence of that. We don't directly try and say, oh, if someone does this, I'm going to do this and this and this. It's like, I'm always going to go and bring my hands forward to the center line to get contact, to control it, to occupy it. So again, I don't get hit and I can hit anytime I want. Our second theory is straight line theory. In the overwhelming majority of Wing Chun techniques, all of our strikes and blocks move from one point in a direct line to the next point. This allows us to save time, save energy and movement, to be very economical in our movements. It also allows me to be faster. One of the Wing Chun idioms says, he walks the bow, but I walk the string, which means if I take the direct line and the other person takes a circular route, whether it's a hook or a side kick like that, all other things being equal, I'm going to get contact first. I'm going to hit first. So again, there's another theoretical orientation around getting to the center line with straight line techniques. So again, the overwhelming majority of Wing Chun techniques go from point A to point B in a straight line. We have two circular techniques, one for the hand, a Hyun Sao, and another one for the foot, a Hyun Ma. And those basically are to allow us that if we have to change the line, if our hands get moved off center line, how do I come back? And those 1 to 2 circular movements allow us to do that. So those are our two theories, straight line and center line. Then we have attributes. So I want to be able to occupy center line with straight line techniques and energy with timing. I don't want to be too far ahead because I might get deked out, and I don't want to be too slow, so I'm going to get hit. So we focus on making sure that when I'm engaging with someone else's energy on center line, that my timing is perfect. I get there right on time, just a little bit ahead. Balance. Of course, I can't hit with power. I can't, take care of myself if I'm worried about falling down. So we have to make sure that I have balance as well as timing. The orientation, which is the third attribute, is again, facing the shape, making sure that my center line, that vertical axis, is always facing my target. I can have Mark come on up here one more time, please. So very quickly, here's Mark's center line. It's aimed right at me. But if I'm standing here, as long as the center line is aimed here, he doesn't have to be on mine. And in fact, ideally in a situation, I want Mark's center line to be off of where mine is, because now I have all the advantages of that structure I demonstrated earlier, and his strong point is over here, which is where I'm not. So the orientation is making sure that I'm always doyang square facing the shape, so I have the advantages of that structure as I enter into center line. Thank you, Mark. Sensitivity. Sensitivity is our ability to feel, mostly with hands, but also with legs, where center line is, to make sure that we're occupying and controlling with the proper techniques, and that the sensitivity also tells us what the other person is doing or about to do with the very subtlest of cues. And so again, thinking that you're a smaller person, you don't have the benefit of size, of brute force, you have to find all kinds of other advantages to possibly defend yourself. And so that's where all of these attributes, these principles, these theories come into play. So if I'm a little bit more sensitive, that I can feel a subtle movement or shift, even maybe before the other person knows they're doing it, I can actually respond quicker. And so the sensitivity is a very, very big part of the Wing Chun system. It has very brutal, effective power for striking, but it also, that's the yang side of the art, but the yin side also is the receptive, the feeling, the probing, finding out what's going on by touch, not by eyes. It's another big thing about Wing Chun. We love contact. The most dangerous, come on in again, Mark. You know, this is where I feel the least comfortable is at distance and range, right? Whereas most people may think, oh, I'm good and you can't reach me. I don't know. He can rush in really quickly. He can throw a really fast, quick kick. But what I want to do is I want to get contact. He comes in. I just want to feel. And right on contact, I can feel where the holes are and do my business. And depending on the scientific studies that you actually read or look at, your felt sense can respond 10 to 20 times quicker than your visual cues. So again, all these beautiful little orientations and nuggets are built into the Wing Chun system. It's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful art. Relaxation, right, allows me lots of different spin-offs from that. If I'm relaxed, then I can be more sensitive, means I can feel things sooner, respond quicker. Relaxation allows the energy to flow more fully, right? So I can actually hit harder and faster. So relaxation allows with more power, more speed, and more sensitivity. So of course, we want to learn how to be relaxed. And there's two sort of foundational pieces. It really is for me, is like the essence of the felt sense of the art. Is I want to create enough structure in my body, and there is going to be some muscle activation and engagement to put things into a position like you engineer a bridge so it can hold a lot of load. Well, I'm going to engineer my body on contact to bring that energy, root it down, but then to be relaxed enough to feel, to move, to strike, to block, to hit very quickly and with power. So that's the relaxation piece. Coordination is one of the other attributes. And this is about moving with body unity, that my hands and feet are moving together. Why is that important? Well, if I generate energy from movements of either shifting or stepping, there's a wave of energy that I'm going to be able to use for power instead of using brute force with muscles. So I'm harnessing these big or micro waves of energy, and I'm then releasing them with explosive power right at the very end. So the coordination allows that when I move, the wave of energy comes up, and when the foot lands, then I can release with a little bit of jing, whether it's a block or a strike. If my hands are ahead of my feet, I'm missing the wave. If my hands are after my feet, I miss that wave as well. So again, moving with body unity, hands and feet moving together, hips and hands. So an integrated being. I'm not going to go off on a tangent talking about how all of these attributes might actually impact you in all the other realms of your life, your relationships, your work, your relationship with the world, with nature, et cetera, et cetera. Just make sure I haven't missed any of the other ones here. So I think I've covered all of the 6 attributes. We have 3 principles. And this guides any situation you may find yourself, whether it's in your training, or whether it's in a fight situation. And I'm going to try and get control of the center line with straight line energy, with timing, sensitivity, or orientation, coordination, balance, et cetera, while saving time, movement, and energy. So I need to find the right and proper technique or response that saves me the most time, energy, and movement. So this guides and shows me when I get into a particular position. Mark, if you want to come out here again, just in a moment of contact, our hands are here. So what's the quickest way that I can get control of the center line? Well, I'm probing and feeling here. It's like this is collapsing. So I'm going to strike here instead of this hand, which has to travel more distance. Just a quick little shift to the hip will bring the hand into a controlling position for a strike. If I find myself in another position, this awkward position here, right? What's the quickest way for me to get to the center line? Well, if I do one little step in, bring my lansao, that seems pretty quick. So it's the exploration of finding your way in that allows, again, the Kung Fu to come into you. I can't teach it explicitly, but the curriculum and the Fat Do will guide you to your own personal exploration and own personal Kung Fu. Right? I'm never going to teach you my Kung Fu, but I'll teach you the system that will guide you to yours. Another beautiful quality of this art. And then we have a bunch of supporting ideas. Hand replacement, that when I have one hand on center line, I have literally another bullet in the chamber that if this one gets moved, the other one's going to fire. So there's always a hand to replace or hit or strike or block ready to be loaded on center line. Chongqi, which we're going to start talking about hopefully soon, this is our topic today, is another supporting idea. And I think it's so critical. I'd like to call it something more important than a supporting idea. My personal belief is the fullest expression of Wing Chun can only manifest itself when we have very consistent forward sticking energy when we have contact with another person. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why that is today. Okay, what else do I want to talk about? Other supporting ideas, the 6 element theory. Right? There's 3 internal and 3 external. So when I'm moving, and this links back to coordination of the body with hands and feet, that when I move, I want my wrist and my ankle bones to be aligned and structured, my elbow and my knee to be aligned, and my shoulder and my hip, that they move together as one. We have internal ones that are more of an energetic and intentional level. And that's more on the esoteric level. But I'm not going to spend too much time around that today. Lin Sil Dai Dar, the hand that blocks also hits. So instead of us, clearing with a block, you'll see other traditional martial arts, so they'll clear and then they'll strike. Wing Chun, we bring our hands in, we'll be blocking on our way to hitting. And again, I'll just bring Mark in here to very briefly tell you about that. If Mark throws a punch with his left hand, so I throw a Chung Choi, blocking punch. So micro slow, you'll notice the elbow stays down to get contact, because that's what I want. I could do this, but the thing is that Mark could also do this. We don't want to trade shots in Wing Chun. Remember, I want to control the center line first, so that's where I bring the blocking punch in. And the angle of the downward elbow will collapse as I come in, and then I'll get to strike. So this is an example of the hand that blocks also hits. You just leave that there. If this was coming out and I brought a paksao, with the slapping hand, well, that paksao is not going to stop here necessarily. If I feel that it collapses, this technique, and I can go through, it'll go here and then bang, right into the next technique. So thank you. There's a fluidity in an idea that we just bring hands and that they block and attack at the same time. So all that to say, and we have idioms as well. Okay, so lots of things in the full Fat Do, the full curriculum. Okay. So now we're going to focus on Chongqi, one of the supporting ideas. So Chongqi, forward sticking energy. Why is that important? Well, because we love contact in Wing Chun. Disengagement, I don't feel comfortable. When I can touch somebody, I know through my sensitivity what they're up to. And I can feel their changes, their intentions, on the subtlest of kinesthetic cues. And so I want to be able to hold and maintain contact with somebody right from the get-go. And so when we look at the idea of sticking hands isn't pushing, grinding, forcing hands, and it's also not light feather touch hands. And the sticking comes from the signature exercise that we have in our martial art, which is chi sao. right? The double hand is sticking, and I'll show that a little bit later. And so just want to practice that. And it will feel like a little bit like when you have contact on somebody, it's like you sort of have like a wet blanket on top of them. It jams them up. It forces them into one of the 3 Wing Chun fight philosophies. Right, as Sun Tzu has said, don't ever fight your opponent on their territory and their battleground. You want to draw them into where you have all the advantages. And the Chongqi creates those advantages by sticking with them and creating opportunities into 3 particular philosophies, or fight situations. Now I'm going to talk about those on my second presentation on August 22nd, same time, same place. If you want to take a look at that, we'll be doing that with more dynamic Chi Sao and even some sparring examples around that. But right now, I just want to give you the sort of fundamental sort of learning of where does Chongqi come from? What does it feel like? How do we train it? How do we develop it? And so it comes from our first basic horse stance in the Wing Chun system, the Yichi Kim Myung Ma. And Mark, if you want to come out here and just slowly get yourself into our basic stance, please. Okay, so if we just take a look at it, you can see it's forward facing, so the center line is aimed wherever his target or his partner would be. There's a slight bend in the knees that allows your center of gravity to stay low, but also allow you mobility. Like other systems have very low stances, but the mobility is limited. If I'm standing up too straight, my center of gravity is a little higher and I can be taken down. So in Wing Chun, we try and find that golden mean, the place of balance in between, where we have a little bit of a lower center of gravity, but we can actually move. Okay, so this is just to feel the structure. And, you're not going to see what he's actually doing here, but where we create the Chongqi, that forward sticking energy, it's like squeezing a tube of toothpaste from the bottom, right? And then as the toothpaste comes out, this is your forward sticking energy. And how does he activate that? Well, he activates that from the Danxian, right? The power center of your body, right? Just below the navel. And so what he's doing, other than his knees bent, is he's actually thrusting his pelvis. He's gently activating and squeezing his glutes, right? It's almost like, crudely put, you're squeezing a penny between your bum cheeks. And also squeezing inside the adductors, right? The inside muscles just below the groin. Again, you'll see other people say, oh, bring the knees in. You're going to really hurt your knees. It's very awkward. But if you squeeze the adductors inwards, the knees will come in, but they'll come in comfortably. So the thrusting, activating the glutes, and the squeezing the adductors is what brings that forward sticking energy. So if you want to actually try this now, if you're at home, you can do that. And we'll just slowly show you how to get into the stance. Feet together, knees lightly bent, spine tall, shoulders back and relaxed. Kick your toes open as wide as you can, comfortably. Kick your heels out as wide as you can, and then rest just underneath the ankle bones. So not leaning forward on the balls of the feet, not too far back on the edge of the feet, just directly under the ankle bones, a slight bend of the knees. Now thrust the pelvis forward, squeeze the glutes, and then squeeze the adductors inward, gently. Right? Don't injure yourself. And you can feel as you squeeze that, there's an activation. That activation binds your upper and lower body together. So now you have the full structure of your body to bring into the engagement with another person. Even in motion, you can activate this on contact. So again, how we create that engineering in structures, we do need to bind the upper and lower body as one unit. If this is broken, if our horse is broken, then this joint can be broken, it can be collapsed, all kinds of things can go wrong. So that's why we bind the upper and lower bodies together while we're squeezing that tube of toothpaste to bring the forward Chongqi energy. Now, if you have a training partner at home, first of all, get consent, but just ask them to come on out here. Just have them stand in front of you and just put an arm out, and you can have some engagement with wrist on wrist, and then just get into the stance and then do that little squeeze. And you'll notice you're going to feel a little pulse of probing energy that comes up here and goes into the wrist. So you can squeeze, you can relax. You can squeeze, you can relax. You can squeeze, you can relax. So this is the forward Chongqi sticking energy. When I squeeze, I can feel that now I'm sticking with Mark. I'm not forcing or grinding or leaning on him, and I'm not light feather touch either. There's no structure here. So again, we're always trying to feel and find the balance of, do I have enough structure, which includes muscle engagement, but that it's relaxed and it's coming from energy being probed into the center line instead of pushed or forced. So I get that balance of structure and relaxation. And if you remember, relaxation gives you better sensitivity, better speed, and more power. So we're bringing all the wonderful qualities of a self-defense situation into a very simple exercise. Now, if I'm pushing too much here, I might force him down, but now I'm locked into place. I have to follow that energy. And also, if I'm really hard, Mark can just quickly change or take this and move me, because I'm trapped within my own self. I'm not able to respond or adapt. If I'm putting some forward sticking energy here, but this is relaxed, if Mark tries anything here, I can change very easily. So again, finding the balance of structure and relaxation. That gentle little probing from activating the glutes, the adductors, and thrusting is I'm just doing a little probe to see how good is his structure. Right? And this is a little teaser for some of what we're going to be doing in the more advanced class in 2 weeks from now, is we use the Chongqi with movement and changing angles to create and find weaknesses in the other person's structure or defense system without having to force it. Right? So here's how I can create opportunities very subtly just to get the center line, like right here, Mark's occupying. He's in the place of advantage, but quick little shift. Right now I have all the advantages to go in and attack. So I don't need to like do big movements. I just need small, just enough to come in and attack. So your Chongqi can help you feel, oh, does the person collapse? Are they getting rigid? Or do I force them to leave the center line where they take the circle route and I go straight line, center line? So again, now you're seeing how the theories work together with the attributes, the principles, and the sporting ideas to help you occupy center line so you never get hit. You can hit anytime you want. So again, you can just practice that felt sense of how do we generate the Chongqi from a stationary horse. I'll just repeat it one more time. Thrust the pelvis, engage the glutes, squeeze the adductors, and not hard, just enough to feel the structure. And then pulse, release, pulse, release, pulse, release. Okay, so now that maybe you have an understanding of the sort of beginning of how to create the Chongqi, then we can take it to a partner exercise. And I'm going to invite Raj to come on up with Mark. And they're going to very slowly demonstrate an exercise, which is the beginning part of our Chi Sao, sticking hands curriculum, called Dan Chi Sao, single hand Chi Sao. Because to learn Chi Sao, it's sort of complex kind of thing. So we just train one hand at a time. And they have a set series of motions where there's a call and response. One person initiates, one person responds. The other person initiates, the other person responds. Noticing that they're playing on center line, with doyen orienting and facing each other, with proper Wing Chun techniques. But the focus here is for them to stick. So they're going to be engaging and making sure that they have sticking energy the entire time. Not just like contact and they're not forcing or grinding, but they're feeling for, can I stick and follow that person while they're on center line? Because if I can stick, then I can control and redirect that technique. I can feel what they're doing, and I can possibly create opportunities for, an attack if that's necessary. But this is a cooperative exercise. Nobody's getting hurt. And, they could do this exercise focusing on straight line. They could do this exercise focusing on any of the theories, principles, and attributes. But right now I'm asking them to be mindful. Their meditation is on the forward sticking energy called Chongqi. By again, squeezing the tube of toothpaste, feeling. And when one person initiates, they may give just a little bit more energy, which may require the other person to activate more Chongqi to neutralize. So they're trying to find the balance where they're just matching each other. No one's dominating. Sometimes if the energy goes less, then the other person backs off just to maintain proper distancing, technique, and structure. So it may not seem like a lot is going on here, but it all depends on the mindfulness of your training. And that's what the Fat Do does. Right, that conceptual framework. It guides you for all the felt senses that you'll need for your Kung Fu, your Wing Chun to be amazing. Now, I can bring you through all the forms, all the drills, all the weapons, all the Chi Sao, give you all the movements, and the Kung Fu will never come unless you understand the philosophical framework of this art. So again, there's deep gratitude for my Sifu and Sigong for really making this, transmitting this traditional knowledge passed on through the hands and maybe a little bit of talk into the Western mind, where my Sifu has brought it into a full curriculum to make it easy for the Western mind that needs to understand things first instead of learn from experience as much. Okay, so again, they're just focusing on matching each other's Chongqi, neutralizing, playing on center line, with a good horse, timing, sensitivity, relaxation, all of those things. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Do a little time check here. So much to talk about in so little time, right? So again, you know, a more practical application, I'll talk more about that on the advanced class. We might do a few fun things to give you a sense of, well, how is this really going to work to help support me in a self-defense situation? Okay. So now we're then going to, I'm going to move my microphone here. Apologize. Now we're going to move into, well, then how do we do this in double hand Chi Sao? So I'm going to invite Mark up, and he and I will just demonstrate. Here, there we go. So, sorry, just hang out here. So I'm going to give you a crash course on Chi Sao. So sticking hands exercise. That's the signature exercise that really brings all of the Wing Chun wisdom into a really helpful exercise. Chi Sao is training the hands to be sensitive, to occupy, to control, to change, to regain, to attack and defend on center line. Now, when we bring this into a fight situation, you can say, well, how is doing something like this going to be useful in a self-defense situation, right? Someone attacks me, we're not going to say, hold on. Right? So engagement, we'll talk later on about my Sang John, like how to get contact safely. But it's just an exercise to help train the hands that on contact, you're going to find the hole very quickly. That if Mark were to fully extend both of these arms on the angle, right? I don't get hit and I get to hit. So this is what I tell you about that center line theory. That on contact, I can feel, right, where the hit is going to be. That Mark again tries to extend on the first, on the angle that he first came in, and nothing's going to happen. But if I do that, okay, so it helps train the hands so that on contact, I'm going to do maybe one move, maybe two, three if my Wing Chun's really bad, okay? So it's, again, an exercise to help train the hands to feel, to control, to occupy the center line, and to block an attack with power, with sensitivity, with straight line energy. So now we're going to be bringing this exercise where we have a set movements that we rotate. So we're sharing the center line now with our wrists. Okay, so it's a cooperative exercise here, because in order for us to get better, we can't be hitting each other all the time. I'm going to get tense. I'm going to get full of fear. I'm not going to want to train. So there has to be a certain level of, as my Sifu says, investing in loss, letting the other person win and get in so they can feel success. And so when we're on the center line is when I'm going to want to squeeze a little pulse of Chongqi from the tube of toothpaste. When we leave center line to change and then come back, I relax, I let go of the Chongqi, and then when I come back to center line, I pulse again. I'm probing with each roll, is there a hole? Did something in his techniques collapse? Is he getting tense? And I'm feeling from here, sensing from here, but here still very relaxed. I'm not pushing hard and leaning forward. I'm staying in my horse, and I've got these nice structured sensors feeling. Is there a hole in his Fuk Sao? Is his Bong Sao collapsing? How about his Tan Sao? Is he getting rigid or is he collapsing? And so I'm just noticing. I'm not going to take advantage of any opportunities. We're just feeling. Relaxing the Chongqi, activating the Chongqi. Relaxing as we leave the center line, activating as we arrive. And so we just feel this pulse of activate, release, activate, release, activate, release, activate. So each pulse of Chongqi is helping you probe on center line for the other person's defenses, structure, feeling where the advantages may be. Okay, so you can practice this for the Wing Chun practitioners out there. You know how to do the basic Luk Sao roll from Chi Sao. Relax as you change. Activate the Chongqi as you arrive. So here are some timing, another one of our attributes. You can change to get into all 4 positions. 2 hands on the inside, 1 on the inside, 1 on the outside, 1 on the inside, 1 on the outside, on the other side, and then 2 on top. So you could do this forever and just develop deep sensitivity with Chongqi, with structure, with timing. Stay here. So just another couple words. So why, again, do we train this? Well, for our hands, for all the reasons I mentioned, but how does it link to a fight? Well, you're training your hands to be highly skilled when somebody else actually has 2 structured hands on center line. So for a Wing Chun practitioner, this is the most difficult situation to deal with, right? If in a self-defense situation, Mark has no hands on center line, right? Bang, I'm just gonna step in and hit. If he just has 1 hand on center line, he's gonna take that hand away and hit with the other one. I can teach you that in 10 seconds. But what if he has 2 hands structured on center line? Ooh, now I have to develop some skill. So this is where the Chi Sao allows you to start developing. What do I do if someone has really good, clean, structured hands on center line? Well, I can't strike here, I can't strike here, I can't strike here. How do I deal with that? And so here again, we're training for the most difficult situation by developing these skills. If someone else has 2 structured hands on center line, how am I going to deal with it? Probing with the Chongqi, feeling for weaknesses, not making things happen. Okay? Then you're forcing. Wing Chun is never forcing. One of my favorite sayings is, my opponent, my partner is always going to communicate to me how he or she would like to be hit. Right? Based on their position, their weaknesses. They're telling me where the opening is. Forward probing energy is like osmosis of water. It's always pushing to go to the ocean, right, in a river or a stream. And if it hits a boulder, if it hits a log jam or some obstacle, it's just waiting for the opening to arrive, right? And as soon as the opening arrives, it flows in to the appropriate place, the appropriate stream, the appropriate trajectory. So that's why I'm never trying to make anything happen in Chi Sao or necessarily a fight. I want to get contact, I want to feel, and then I want to see where the holes are. And then change, do whatever I need to do. So again, there's a philosophical mindset around that, about not initiating, not aggressing. Wing Chun is a self-defense system. It's not a combat sport. It's not an attacking. It's not learning how to be a violent, aggressive person. It's holding your ground, being reasonable. But if the fight's on, then you're going to have contact and you're going to go. You're going to do your business. It'll be done very, very quickly. It's designed to finish the situation very fast. Smaller person, possibly a female or a male, doesn't really matter, or anywhere in between that spectrum. They may not have the ability to roll around on the ground, to wrestle. Maybe they have a real job and they can't train 10 hours a day to build up their endurance. So for them, it's like, get your hands on center line, feel control, move, hit, finish the job, go home, see your family, have some tea. So what else do I want to say about this? So we'll come on back a little bit, Mark. So after we've learned to be good cooperative partners with Chi Sao, probing, feeling, changing hand positions, we're doing this from a static horse position. After a while, we're both going to get really good. We're not going to allow holes, right? I can fine-tune my techniques and my center line and all those things, but from a stationary position with 2 high-level practitioners, there's not going to be any holes to actually train. So Mark could give me an opportunity intentionally. He might collapse a technique, and I'll feel the hole and I'll flow in. He might get rigid on one of his techniques. I'll change the line and attack the center line from a new angle. So he can give me opportunities to feel and sense, right? Or I can start making things more dynamic, that I can bring my forward sticking energy, that Chongqi, into some stepping. Now I'm stepping and moving his horse and seeing if the Chongqi, the movement, and my hands and timing and all of that will create one of the 3 opportunities that I'm looking for in Wing Chun. I'm looking for their techniques to get collapsed by just probing with a little bit of hip. I'm not forcing with the arm. I'm not even extending the arm until I feel it's collapsing with the hip. And then when I feel it's collapsing and he can't get away, and literally, I only pull the trigger on my strikes when I'm a couple of inches away. I'm feeling, and then here I know he can't get away, then I'm going to explode like a nuclear bomb onto the center line. And then release that, and then be relaxed to feel again with sticking energy for where the next technique may be. So again, there's this pulse of release and relax of your Chongqi that comes from here, and then we bring it into movement, right? And then I might run a hand as I step and activate the Chongqi to see, hey, do I really collapse him, or do I really make him get tense? If he tenses me, he's going to move me to a new angle where I can attack. Or as we've demonstrated earlier, instead of getting tense, he'll run his hand around to try and come back to the center line. But because he's doing a circular movement, which takes more time, movement, and energy, and I'm going straight line, center line, all other things being equal, I'm going to hit the center line first. So those are the three advantages that we train and train and train. Can we collapse someone's structure with Chongqi and good technique? Can we trigger them into getting rigid so I can play them like the mokjong, the wooden dummy? Or that I can force them with Chongqi, not my force, but with just better angles, little pulse of squeezing the toothpaste to get him to leave center line, and then I'm just going to go into the hole that I create for him. Okay, so I'll give you a few more examples. I'm going to bring Raj up here. And Mark, sorry, you too. So I'm just going to have them play a little bit, starting with the basic roll. And just again, starting off feeling the Chongqi. Because Mark's the Sihing, he's going to be initiating the changes in the movements. And Raj, as the Sidai, the younger brother, is going to respond. So again, here's the cooperation. One person is initiating some energy, the other person is responding. Right now, they're just playing with the Chongqi to neutralize the changes. And Mark's probing each time he rolls, he's probing into Raj's structure to see, is he getting tense? Is he collapsing? Or does he feel like he would leave the center line? He's not going to take advantage of it yet, but he's learning how to feel what those three things are like. So he'll recognize it so that when it happens super fast, very quickly, whatever you train slow will be there when it happens fast. If you train it too fast in the beginning, it's not going to actually show up for you, right? Unless you feel it, right? You can do fast, flashy hands with a cooperative partner and you'll look good, but it won't be real. And you'll develop this false sense of confidence. So we have to feel, and they'll with the relationship, they need to be able to know hey, am I going too fast for my older brother or younger brother? And they'll know that if they're struggling, continuing, or keeping up, it's oh, my sensitivity tells me I need to slow down so we can both learn. So again, I just love the relational aspect of this art. We're working together to help all of us get better. And so now as they play this, as Mark initiates, Mark's going to just run a little bit more of a shifting hip into his techniques. Not going to step, he's just going to probe, engaging the whole structure. And notice how we just moved Raj out of the stance with just a little probe from the hip and a good technique. Right? And Raj gets to train, how do I maintain my balance when someone moves me out of my grounded horse? So again, they're both learning, even though Mark is initiating with an intention. Raj is still trying to neutralize from a static pose without the benefit of having a wave of energy to bring in, other than his Chongqi. And then if he does happen to move Raj out of his horse with a nice probe, then Raj will learn how to regain his balance and still train his hands to occupy center line. So it's beautiful, beautiful qualities that you get to develop through these very simple exercises that are cooperative and intentional in nature. And again, the focus here is on the Chongqi, sticking, probing, feeling, while maintaining enough structure so that you don't get hit, but enough relaxation that if you feel an opening, that you can explode on the center line with devastating power, right? And so he'll just keep probing. He's not going to do anything about it, but he might notice, right? He'll run a little bit more energy with the hips. Chongqi on the center line, relax as you change. Chongqi, you could be a hip as you squeeze. It could be both hips forward. It could be this hip, just probing with one side or the other. Just playing around, exploring with what they're doing. Both learning from the experience. Now, as Mark continues to probe into Raj's structured defenses, if he does feel that Raj collapses, gets tense, or leaves center line, he'll be allowed to step in and do one technique and place it on center line. And Raj is going to let him do it if it's an honest, clean probe where he does get triggered into one of those three unhelpful sort of situations where he collapses, he gets tense, or he feels he needs to leave center line. So Mark now gets to learn how to use the probing to create opportunities in the holes and then follow in with a step in one technique on center line with good distancing, with good power. And Raj will be maybe a good partner and maybe give Mark some opportunities. Intentionally get tense, intentionally collapse a technique to see if Mark's actually really feeling for the opportunity or if Mark's trying to program an intention. Again, we don't want to do that for this part of the Chi Sao training. Later on, I might create a drill where I have someone come in with a particular attack, but that's to give the other person something to work with. Okay, but again, for your personal application in a real situation, you don't want to program. The only thing you want to program is how do I get to center line, get contact, feel, do your business, and finish it. Okay, so the Fat Do with all of its theories, principles, attributes, supporting ideas, and idioms allows that sort of become a brilliantly embodied martial ability that you can have. Again, think about how all of those things can help you in your life. Straight line, setting goals, focusing. Center line, focusing on things that are really important, that are a priority, that are really deeply meaningful. Timing, right? When's the right time to have a conversation? Sensitivity, what's the right language to use, right? Not too aggressive, but also not too passive, one that's assertive. Chun has that just embedded in the way we move, the way we stand, the way we compose ourselves. Orientation, I face things directly. I don't shy away from them. I don't turn away. I show up with my full being, my full expression of myself, not aggressively, right? But I'm here. We can be friends, or if you want it to be otherwise, we can do that too. But I'm showing up and I'm facing it. And my other favorite sayings in life is if we have problems, the way out is through. Not avoiding, not fighting, and certainly not freezing. 3 unhealthful stress responses. Okay, so again, Wing Chun is elegantly beautiful of integrating all these beautiful qualities into your body. And when you have a felt sense of what this is like, it changes your emotional expression. It then changes your thinking patterns. It then changes the way you behave in the world. And then, of course, you're going to get a much more positive, helpful, wonderful feedback from the world, from people, from life. Just because you've embodied this felt sense of how to be in the world with confidence and structure and timing and sense, all these things, right? That's what's the universe is going to bring back to you if you want to get esoteric on this part. And so we can take it now to the next level where now Mark can probe by running the hands and stepping in. So maybe take a step back or two, because Raj is likely going to be moving backwards. So now he's going to probe with a running hand, a step, and a little pulse of Chongqi to really see, hey, is there an opportunity to make Raj collapse, to make Raj get tense, or to make Raj leave center line to try and come back because he's being moved off of it. And then if Mark feels the opportunity, he's just going to flow in, right? The way that it opens up, he's not going to rush in head first. If it opens up at a certain speed limit, say 5 miles an hour, Mark's going to enter at 5.1. Right, just a little bit ahead of the opening. If you rush into an opening, somebody might be suckering you into a setup. And of course, if you're too late, well, we sort of know what the consequence of that will be. So, and again, now we're bringing timing and sensitivity into this expression. So noticing, it's controlling the center line first. 5 more minutes? Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So now he's using structure, Chongqi, movement, and probes, all to get Raj's Kung Fu up to a higher level, because now Raj has to still try and neutralize Mark, and Mark has all the advantages. Mark's initiating. Mark has movement and energy and changing the angle. So Raj has to square up. He has to try and really get his techniques even better. He has to try and squeeze more toothpaste subtly to neutralize a little pulse of energy on Mark's techniques. right? So again, this is how both brothers and sisters, when they train together, bring each other up in their skill level. Raj gets to work his horse when Mark moves him backwards to keep his balance. Even if someone moves you in a fight, there's going to be movement. It's going to be like a bit of a grappling situation. That's okay. If you can keep your feet, keep your center line, keep orientation while someone's moving you around and you trust your legs, you're not going to panic. You're going to be able to maintain all of these key attributes and theories because we train them one at a time. And we might link a principle and an attribute in a particular exercise. And then it's like weaving a beautiful tapestry of a carpet. This is how the Wing Chun gets into your nervous system, by building little neural pathways of micro skills and then linking them right mindfully through the understanding of the Fat Do. And then just someday you wake up and it's like, oh, the Kung Fu, she's in me. What a beautiful, beautiful thing to have. So thank you very much, gentlemen. So come on up here. So in conclusion, again, just want to thank you again for joining us for this sort of introduction to forward-sticking energy, Chongqi, within the Wing Chun curriculum, our Fat Do, our conceptual framework. And again, we're going to be taking this to a more dynamic, more self-defense-y kind of level, more freestyle Chi Sao kind of level in our next topic on August 22nd at the same time at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. And again, just want to wish everybody a happy World Wushu-Kungfu Day, and very happy that we were invited to present to you today. And I think we have a couple minutes for questions if there happens to be some.
We don't have questions, but we have Ricky Liu sending regards to you.
Okay.
And we also have Mark Meir saying thank you so much. This was really interesting and well done.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Raj and Mark, for assisting. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.